Welcome to Leading Edge Conversations, empowering corporates, financial advisors, and retirement fund members with insights that matter. Brought to you by Liberty Corporate Benefits, this series dives into the future of employee benefits, regulatory strategies, and financial empowerment. Thought Leadership Amplified. Tune in and stay ahead.
Hello and welcome to Leading Edge Conversations, brought to you by Liberty Corporate Benefits. My name is Nontutsugo Mhlungu, and on today's episode, we're unpacking a topic that is shaking up the industry: the rise of the young investors. Are advisors and trustees keeping up, or are we losing a generation? All right, today in studio, I am joined by Avi as well as Louis, who will be contributing to this important conversation. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
All right, Avi, let's perhaps start with you. Let's start with this interesting figure that will make any trustee sit up. More than 58% of South Africa's population is under the age of 35, right? So that's more than half the country. That's a significant number. And yet when you look at the participation in retirement, the engagement, governance, young people are barely there. So in your view and in your experience, why do you think young people are turning to platforms like Easy Equities and crypto instead of engaging with the employer-sponsored retirement funds?
So I think there's a few reasons. It's not just a simple, straight answer. And if you look at the young investor, a key thing about them is they're actually looking for immediate gratification. So the world that they grew up in is where everything's available to them immediately. If I want to buy something today or tomorrow, or if I'm looking for a specific item, I can find it online, I can purchase it, I can receive it almost in the next 24 hours. So similarly in investments, you kind of want that immediate gratification. But understanding that retirement's a long-term game, there is a lot to think about, because investing in the now to seek returns now means that's a lot of risk. So it's similar to a story that I could think about with my sister when I was younger, where we used to get this condensed milk in a tube. We'll split it between the two of us, and almost every 2 hours I'll probably grab one, eat it, finish it, because I wanted to have it. And when I was done, my sister would still have hers, and then the next day she'll have one in front of me, and I felt quite bad. So I can understand the need for immediate gratification, but holding out for the long-term investment where you can actually enjoy it over a longer period of time and get more output from it, is quite key. The other thing is young investors have access to platforms like TikTok and Instagram. What you see on those platforms are people that are building a lot of stuff using crypto. You're seeing the success stories of crypto. And I think success also is a question mark, because how much of it is real, but you're also not seeing the failures. If we talk about the failure of AfriCrypto in 2001, or 2021, sorry, nobody really talks about that. You see the talk about Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and those things that have become successful over years. So I think the fixation and the isolation and the information that's fed to youth is around these aspects, and that's why you see them tending towards crypto.
Why do you think they are steering, and perhaps it's just to build on from what Avi has said, why do you think they're steering away from these traditional retirement and investing platforms? Is it a trust issue? Is it a communication? What is it that's causing young people to go in the opposite direction, do you think?
That's a very good question. And I think with many things that we these days face, it's multi-layered. So I think as a society, and fundamentally, the thinking, and I think Avi mentioned it a bit, the thinking of doing something for the future doesn't come as easy as it actually should. So I think there's definitely something that this younger generation shares with everyone else, where saving is just an issue. Then if we get closer to home, and I think Avi did mention some specifics around this generation, what they like and what they prefer. But what I think we can add there is this view that authority is bad. And added to that, even that savings isn't sexy. So I think that's the challenge that we are faced with, is how can we actually help them understand to say, look, we are here to help you, and let's make saving something exciting.
And so with that, Are retirement funds still relevant for young people then, given what Avi has said and what you've just said? Is it still relevant for them, or are we seeing a slow erosion of the traditional financial institutions?
There's two main considerations that we need to take into account when answering that question, Noni. I think the first thing is people are living longer. So you need to now think about, what am I going to live from when I'm 80? And that's an important question. So I think from a longevity perspective, there's definitely a need to save for retirement. That's the one question. The second one around, well, is a retirement fund then the ideal vehicle through which to do it? It's a separate question, and I think it is. I think as a society, we will not get away from ever not needing to invest in a retirement fund, but it's the duty of the fund itself to stay up to date and relevant with the actual needs of the generation that we are targeting. So yes, from a formal purpose savings vehicle, it will always be there, but it definitely needs to change in the way it shows up for younger investors.
Absolutely. It needs to evolve with the times. And I think we'll come to that with the gig work, and the way that they are working is very different to how it's been done, right? And so maybe just, I'll come to you, Avi, in a short while, but should retirement funds be competing or collaborating with fintechs, which are seemingly the sexier sort of platforms and models? What should be happening over there?
Yeah, I think if I had 5 friends for every time I heard the word fintech these days, I would be a billionaire, and I myself don't need to save for retirement. So I think let's just quickly pause and say, but what is a fintech?
Yes.
So a fintech can be a company or a solution that actually solves a financial problem through technology. If you were to break down exactly the types of services currently being used by fintechs, you find the makings of a great retirement solution. Aspects like the ability to make and receive money, the ability to transfer data through blockchain in a safe and secure manner, ability to do credit ratings securely online, and for that to impact your savings, bonuses, all of those things. Now, all of a sudden, if you package that together, you don't see a traditional, old-fashioned, boring retirement fund anymore. You see a mobile wallet or something that competes like a mobile wallet. Now, all of a sudden, you breach that gap with the newer generation, where now they start to see something that's old and traditional, like we mentioned earlier, to something that's new and, guess what? Sexy.
There is nothing new under the sun. So everything that they're doing is an adaptation of what we are already seeing, right? So collaboration, you're saying it's more of a collaborative approach.
So I think from a retirement fund perspective, it's not a either or when compared to a fintech, but definitely a collaboration that brings more greater power when joined forces, as opposed to two opposites that someone needs to choose between.
Absolutely, absolutely. Love that. Avi, let's bring you back. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, if I can add to that, if you look at the space that fintech owns versus the space that your regular insurance company owns, they are quite distinct, but there is an overlap, and that's where the chance for collaboration comes in. So that's specifically where you can get that sexy product that's more available, more relevant, more accessible to the youth.
Okay. All right, Avi, then just a quick one here. What would a retirement product designed by young people look like? You spoke about young people want quick and easy and fast and accessible and high risk. So what would that look like in an ideal world?
Yep. If a young person were to design a retirement product, I could only assume that, I think also considering in the South African market, you have a high penetration of mobile usage. So you're going to have something that's on a mobile platform. So it's easy to access, easy to look at, easy to engage with. It's going to cater for the fact that in the youth environment, you have a lot of gig work, like you said. You have a lot of unemployment. You have a lot of changing circumstances that need to be accounted for. So there's this flexibility that comes in that needs to be allowed for. If you take a look at other similar type of concepts, it's a pay-as-you-go type of thing. So it's I can change my contribution to what I can afford at any point in time. I can do that at any point in time. And then in addition to that, something that's quite important for youth to understand, and I don't know if this is something that they would necessarily want from a design, but it's something that's needed, is the financial literacy that comes. So if you are financially literate, you'd be able to make the right choices when it comes to your investments. So you know the opportunities you are giving up versus what you're actually doing, or the opportunity cost of what you're doing. And I think that's quite important, because if you look at some of the stats that you see, CNBC did a survey with the youth where they've seen videos of the power of compound interest, and that made people want to invest sooner. Now, this is something in the financial industry you learn about, you know about, but you don't really talk about it, and we don't really market it. And that's something that's quite important. So if with a mobile app, you could have quick lessons or quick access to videos that are accessible on TikTok platforms that youth will be able to engage with quicker. So I think something around flexibility, accessibility, obviously digital, and then there's the human element. Everything digital is left up to your own devices. You do need that guidance through time. So having that human touch in the form of a financial advisor that's available to you, whether it's in an augmented reality world, whether it's in the physical world, something that can be made accessible.
Louis, you wanted to jump in there?
Yes, thanks, Noni. The one aspect I would add to Avi's ideal design is for us to, as an industry, to create a one-stop shop. So to say that when the individual looks at their retirement savings, they can also see their car finance or their home loan. That single view, I think, does put things into perspective, and to then have the flexibility and give them the flexibility to move things around. Avi mentioned to understand the consequences of a decision. So I think that single view is very important. Then also to make it fun, to make it into a game. You don't need to win a physical prize or a monetary prize every time you save. But I think just the element to take a bit off the pressure will definitely add value.
I love that single view, and perhaps we can unpack that in a bit. Avi, coming back to you, you touched on it a little bit about the gig work, and we see that this is how young people are working now. A lot of them don't want to be locked in to long-term anything. So, you've got the gig workers, you've got job hoppers, you've got freelancers. It's just the way that they are working now. So how can we cater to that lifestyle and that way of working, design products that suit that lifestyle, because it's here and it's here to stay?
That's actually quite interesting, because if you look at the existing products that actually exist, they do cater for this to some extent. So within your regular retirement fund with your employer, if you were to leave employment, you have the option of keeping your money saved within that fund, so it can continue to grow. I think where the difficulty comes in today's world is that you can have bits and pieces invested in different companies, but you won't have a consolidated view. So to Louis' point of bringing that picture together so you can actually make decisions off it, or decisions on your retirement fund a lot more easier, would be beneficial. But the fact that we can already cater for the fact that you may change jobs, you may be unemployed. With unemployment, if you're contributing, you can take a premium holiday. These things already exist. You have products that are designed not specifically for retirement, but can be used for that purposes. We have tax-free savings. Tax-free savings is a concept that came around about 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And with that is, you can contribute when you have the money to contribute. It is the savings build up free of tax. Your payout is free of tax. You have access to it as well, which then also aligns to the fact that people might become unemployed, might get retrenched, or they finished off a gig and they don't have income for the next couple of months. You have access to that money. So there are those things that are currently catered for within our products. And then with the recent regulations with two-pot, there is an element now where you can access your two-pot savings. A lot of the time people say, keep it. It's for the long term. It's for your future goals. However, the reality is, I may need money today. I can't afford a loaf of bread and I want to purchase that. What am I supposed to do? Do I take a loan out for a loaf of bread? Or can I actually take some money out of my retirement savings using the two-pot system that's already there? And then maybe commit to myself that I'll put that money back when I have it later. So these things are there. I think it's just being able to talk to and market it to the younger generation.
You mentioned a little while ago that the products are already in place. It's just a matter of making these young investors aware, perhaps. What role, if any, can advisors play in making young investors aware of these products that already exist for their unique lifestyles and their way of work now?
Yeah. I like the way you say that it's about their unique lifestyles. So advisors do need to put themselves in the youth's shoes to understand the situations that they're in. You have a different type of way of dealing employment. It's not the old school way of stay in a job for 10 years. It's about moving around. It's about having that flexibility, because we know that youth actually, they desire that life and work balance. So if they need that, they have certain needs that will accompany that. So if I need to save for retirement, but I'm not going to stay employed for a long period of time, how else can I save? And like we mentioned, the products exist. Advisors need to then match those products to exactly what the client needs at that point in time. The other thing is the financial literacy. There's a lot of flexibility within those products. The premium holidays that we mentioned exist within those products. The different product sets that exist that have the accessibility. So if someone's concerned that I'm tying up my money and I'm not going to have access to it, there are products that are designed to create that accessibility, and it's about educating individuals on that. But more importantly, I think it's taking a few steps back and actually taking a look at financial literacy, which is, why do we need to save now as opposed to closer to retirement? Why is retirement important now? Why should I take away that risk of not being able to earn an income at a certain point in my life when I'm currently living a lifestyle where I'm happy to go a couple of months without an income, but that means I have a saving to help me survive for this time. So advisors do need to bridge that gap between the knowledge that exists within the financial world and then the needs that exist on the client side of things.
So it's a big mindset shift. I think we have to acknowledge for young people, there's even an expression, YOLO. You only live once. And so for them, honestly, worrying about what's going to happen in 50 years is the furthest thing from their mind. So how do you help them to have an appreciation for why that's important, right? Yes, we get that you have a lifestyle that you need to sustain now, but why is it important for you to put something away for your future? All right, thank you for that, Avi. Let's talk about solutions now. Let me come back to you, Louis. When should young people start saving or investing or putting money into the retirement fund? Is there an age? What's your, please, I want to hear your take on this.
Yes. It's an easy answer from the day that they are born. And I'll tell you why. So multiple research has shown that if you learn someone something as part of their early childhood education, the lasting effect of that is much more powerful versus trying to teach someone that is an adult to start to save. So from a primary school level on upwards, they can really start laying the foundation to just plant those small seeds in children's mind that eventually, when they themselves are faced with like real world challenges and adult things, that those seeds would start to bloom. And apologies for the analogy, but then that will just awaken this understanding and awareness that they were being brought up with. So I think definitely as early as possible. And it can start very, very simple. I mean, you can save by just having a bank account. Yes, there's then additional complexities and different types of vehicles that you can save for retirement purposes. And Avi did mention a few of the options that are available. But that is another level or layer of savings. So something as taking your first holiday job, or when you walk the neighbor's dogs, teach the children to set aside a portion of that in their bank account. And then as they grow, they can be taught, look, there's more than just a bank account, there's a bank account and a tax-free savings option. So I think just slowly start introducing them into all of this, but by laying that fundamental childhood foundation, I think it's very important.
Is there a point, I'd like to ask this, where one can find themselves thinking, I've left it too late? Maybe because we always think we've got time and it's that ever elusive, I'll start the diet on Monday, and it just never comes around. So, what about someone who's sitting and thinking, yikes, I'm 38 And I've been changing jobs, and every time I change jobs, I take the money out, and now I feel like it's too late.
100%. And just as a side note, I'm very familiar with that diet deadline. I've been exposed to that one for a few years now. But yes, on a more serious note, and I unfortunately are faced with the reality of things on a day-to-day basis. When we look at our own umbrella fund, there's some shocking stats. So we see that on average, when people retire, let's say the average age is currently 60, the average money that people retire with is 250,000 Rand. So that means that 250,000 Rand needs to sustain someone for 30 years into their retirement life. That is shocking.
Wow.
You basically need to live in your retirement years for as long as you worked. So just that's a bit of a shock factor. So to answer your question, definitely, there is a point where it's too late.
It's too late.
And unfortunately, there's not a single product, and I can guarantee you this, that will solve that problem for you. So again, I come back to my earlier comment around when does someone need to start? As soon as they can.
As early as.
And it must be that deeper connection as to, don't see it as a grudge purchase. See it as something that if I want a certain standard of living in my retirement years, I need to start now. Yes, it's uncomfortable and it might be unfashionable or not sexy, but that's then our challenge, is to say, how can we help those investors by making it sexy again?
That is a shocking statistic. My goodness. There's a little bit of fear-mongering there. I guess you need to do a little bit of that, maybe for people to catch the reality. And that brings me to my next question, and you can weigh in, Avi. How can then advisors and trustees begin to engage young people? Is it making, exactly what you just told us, that this is what we're seeing? And nobody wants that unless you think you're going to win the lotto, or everyone always has hopes of inheriting money or starting a business that's really going to make millions, but that's not true for most people.
Yeah.
So how can advisors and trustees begin to engage young people, to make them aware and alert to the realities of what's happening?
From a trustee's perspective, as the custodians of retirement savings and by managing where someone's money is invested in and how much they contribute each month, I think it's important for trustees to understand who their members are. Do a deep dive, go to site visits. Sometimes we come across a setup where, as the custodians, the trustees are too far removed from the man on the ground, the man in the factory shop. They don't understand what's important, what's their challenges, short-term, long-term, across the spectrum of things. So I think trustees really need to get comfortable and familiarize themselves with this multi-generational mix of investors that they have in their retirement funds and to whom they are accountable for. And I think when it comes to investing, yes, it is, of course, about choosing the right portfolio, making the right mix available, and also looking at fees, which is a topic for another day. But then there's really challenging the service providers. It's like, but how are you going to help me to reach that section of my workforce which I can't? And how are we going to communicate those important messages, the campaigns, the language that we use, the examples that we use? To receive once a year a statement from your retirement fund, it's not enough. So that continuous engagement, I think, will really help trustees to truly connect with all of the generations under their care, and especially so the younger ones who want a more informal way of being engaged with. I think the tone that they use, the examples that they use, that can really make a difference, as opposed to just a formal written letter. Dear so-and-so, I hope this finds you well. Those are the types of, I almost want to say, old-fashioned ways of communicating that we need to steer away from.
They want to be engaged on WhatsApp, and you've got to go to the platforms that best speak to them.
Yeah.
All right, Avi, so as we close, what is the single most important thing in your view that advisors and trustees need to be discussing with these young investors?
Yeah. The simple answer, or the most obvious answer, would be the default portfolios that are available on the fund. But that is a secondary effect. I think the primary thing that they actually need to be discussing is a budget. If I can sit and understand your personal circumstance, to understand what you need to spend on, what you should be spending on, what lifestyle can you live within, while still making contribution towards your retirement or making some sort of savings, at least set that up at the start. Have some sort of gamification like we discussed, where if I can actually stick to this budget on a month-to-month basis, what incentives are there for me? Yes, you're going to get a good retirement at the end of it, but immediately what can I see as the benefits of my actions? And I think maybe that should be the key discussion, because we try to amend things when the money's with us. But that's also a bit too late. That's if the money gets to us. That's if sufficient money gets to us to do what we need to do to make it grow for retirement. So I think it should start at the budgeting stage.
Louis, same question. What is the single most important thing advisors and trustees should be discussing?
As we're asking the question, I think the phrase that comes to mind is change ready. It's easy for us to sit and talk and to unpack these discussions. And thank you so much. It was great unpacking these aspects with you, Nonnie. But I think, how do we take it out there? And it can be quite daunting and complex for both advisors and trustees to assimilate this massive amount of information that's out there to the point where it's overwhelming. And I think it's there where we would like to help trustees and advisors. I think if I can encourage us, advisors, trustees, the whole value chain, is just to look for reasons to believe and look for reasons to want to adopt the change. Whether it's a change in a new product that comes to market, a change in the way that we communicate with members and trustees, and just the overall time that we take to engage on it, whether at an early level when someone is still at school, but throughout varsity, just to keep the conversation going and not to be shy to talk about it at the next braai.
I love that. Avi, Louis, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to unpack these important issues. You heard it right here. Budgeting is super important, and saving for your retirement from the time you are born. So if you haven't started already, you might want to start now. It's been absolutely fascinating. We've learned so much on this episode. From myself, Nontutsugo Mhlungu. Till next time, cheers.